The fluorescent lights of Harborview Medical Center buzzed faintly, casting a cold glow over room 412, where I stood alone, clutching Eleanor Grayson's hand. It was April 7th, 2020, a dreary Seattle afternoon, rain drumming against the window as the city huddled under the early grip of the COVID-19 lockdown. The hospital was a fortress of restrictions, masks mandatory, visitors limited to one per patient, hallways eerily quiet. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, lay frail, her breath shallow, cancer eroding her strength. At 3:58 p.m., the heart monitor's steady beep dissolved into a soft, endless hum, marking her final moment. Sarah Bennett, 29, froze, her cooling fingers in mine, the sole witness to her passing. No husband, no sister-in-law, no friends, just me, enveloped in a silence heavier than the sanitized air. Mrs. Bennett, are you okay? Nurse Maria appeared, her eyes warm above her surgical mask, a clipboard pressed to her chest. She'd been my only companion these past 3 days, watching me maintain a vigil through strict protocols. My calls and texts to Michael and Rachel unanswered. I nodded, my throat constricted, the mask damp against my lips. I called them again this morning, I said, voice muffled. They said they'd come. Maria's gaze held pity she didn't voice. Some find these moments hard, she said. But we both knew it wasn't hardship, it was choice. Michael, my husband, cited endless Zoom meetings. Rachel, his sister, claimed quarantine constraints. Neither had appeared, leaving me to face Eleanor's decline alone. The hospital's quiet amplified my isolation. COVID rules had stripped away the usual bustle, no families crowding waiting rooms, no balloons for recovering patients. I'd fought to be Eleanor's designated visitor, arguing she needed someone, anyone. Now, the weight of that choice pressed against my chest. I'd slept in a stiff vinyl chair, survived on granola bars from my purse, and sent desperate messages. She's weaker. It's close. Please. Michael's replies were sparse. Swamped. Try tomorrow. Rachel offered nothing. Not even a text. My phone held 3 voicemails from work. I taught high school English, now via Skype, but they felt trivial beside Eleanor's fading pulse. The world outside was unraveling. Toilet paper shortages and mask mandates dominating headlines. Yet here, time was measured in breaths. I should call the funeral home, I mumbled, fumbling for my phone through gloved hands. Maria guided me to the chair, her touch gentle. The doctor will handle paperwork first, she said. And Eleanor left this for you. From her scrubs, she produced a sealed envelope, my name in Eleanor's elegant, looping script, edges creased. She was adamant I gave it to you only after she was gone, Maria said, voice low. My hands trembled as I took it. The envelope heavier than it should be. In 3 years of marriage to Michael, Eleanor had been kind but reserved, shared lemon scone recipes, polite chats during holiday visits, but no deep bond. We'd had moments, like when she taught me to knead dough or when I drove her to her book club, but she'd always held back. What could she need to say now? In death, I peeled off my gloves, broke the seal, and found a single sheet. Taped to it was a tarnished brass key, edges worn smooth. Below, an address in Enumclaw, 40 miles southeast, and a single, chilling sentence. They left me to die alone, as they will you. This is your armor. The words pierced me, sharp as the rain outside, their meaning elusive yet heavy. Is everything okay? Maria asked, noting my expression. Yes. I lied, folding the paper. Just personal. After signing forms and collecting Eleanor's belongings, a wool scarf, a dog-eared Jane Eyre, a silver locket I left the hospital, sanitizing my hands at the exit. The April dusk was too bright. Masked families loading patients into cars. A stark contrast to my solitude. I sat in my Subaru, the envelope in my lap, unable to start the engine for 20 minutes, my mind replaying Eleanor's final weeks. She'd grown quieter in the hospital, her eyes often fixed on me, searching, as if measuring my presence. I'd attributed her silences to pain or medication. But now I wondered, had she been choosing me? The drive to our Capitol Hill apartment was surreal. Seattle's streets deserted under lockdown. Shuttered coffee shops, empty Pike Place Market, and masked pedestrians felt like a dystopian film. At home, I sanitized my shoes, hung my mask, and checked my phone. No messages from Michael or Rachel. When it rang, Michael's name sparked a mix of anger and relief. "Hey, babe," he said, casual as if ordering takeout. "You grabbing groceries? We're out of coffee." The normalcy made me grip the counter. The wood cold. "Eleanor died today," I said, voice flat, silence stretched. Then, "Oh, when?" 3:58 p.m. I replied, tears burning. "You'd know if you'd answered." A pause. "Look, I was buried in virtual pitches," he said, defensive. "Mom was always distant. You handled it, right?" I hung up. The apartment's silence suffocating. Bills, Zoom schedules, and a grocery list cluttered the counter. Irrelevant, beside Eleanor's envelope. That night, Michael stayed in his home office, laptop glow seeping under the door. I lay awake, the key pressed into my palm, its edges sharp. By 5 a.m., I decided. I showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater, and programmed the Enumclaw address into my GPS. The drive took me through silent suburbs, past closed strip malls, into rural hills where lockdown felt distant. The address led to a gravel drive, blackberry bushes hiding a sagging iron gate. Beyond was a cedar-shingled cottage, windows tangled with wild roses, paint peeling to gray wood. It looked forgotten, untouched by time. The key fit the lock, the door creaking open to a lavender-scented stillness. Dust motes danced in sunlight through faded curtains, revealing a home-frozen books on sagging shelves, a quilt over a sofa, a photo album on a coffee table. On the kitchen table sat another envelope, to be opened upon my death, for attorney. I closed the door, the silence embracing me. This wasn't the Bellevue assisted living facility Michael had chosen, where plexiglass and masks defined Eleanor's final days. This was her true home, a secret entrusted to me. I called the attorney, Rebecca Langston. "Seattle. Langston Legal." A crisp voice answered. "I'm Sarah Bennett," I said, voice steadying. "Eleanor Grayson, my mother-in-law, died yesterday. She left an envelope for you." A pause, then warmth. "Mrs. Bennett, I expected you. I'm so sorry. Can you come tomorrow?" I agreed, gripping the envelope. "Bring it," Rebecca said. And Sarah, Eleanor insisted all beneficiaries attend the will reading. Michael and Rachel, too. I hung up, staring at the cottage's walls. Eleanor's presence lingering in the lavender air, urging me forward. The Seattle dawn of April 8, 2020, was gray. Clouds heavy as I drove back to the Enumclaw cottage. The second envelope in my purse. The will reading with Rebecca Langston was set for 10. But I needed Eleanor's hidden home to anchor me before facing Michael and Rachel. The gravel drive crunched, wild roses brushing my car. The cottage's weathered shingles softened by mist. Lockdown had silenced Seattle, but here, The quiet was intimate. Expectant, I unlocked the door, its creak familiar, and stepped into lavender-scented air, dust swirling in morning light. The attorney's envelope sat on the kitchen table, a mystery I wasn't ready to unravel. Last night, Michael had stayed in his office, Zoom calls droning, his post-it note handle mom stuff. Back laid a sting. Rachel hadn't answered my texts about Eleanor's death or the will reading, her silence a fresh wound. I'd stood alone by Eleanor's bedside, holding her hand through morphine hazes, while they hid behind pandemic excuses. Her first letter. They left me to die alone, as they will you. This is your armor haunted me, hinting at a betrayal I didn't fully grasp. Why had Eleanor, who'd kept me at arm's length, chosen me to hold her secrets? In 3 years, we'd shared small moments, her guiding my hands to roll pie dough, me driving her to knitting group, but never confidences. Yet, her letter felt like a trust I hadn't earned. I wandered the cottage, footsteps echoing on hardwood. The living room was a shrine to Eleanor's hidden life. Bookshelves held classics, Dickens, Bronte mixed with gardening guides and poetry. A leather photo album on the coffee table drew me in. I opened it, finding black and white photos of a young Eleanor, radiant beside James, her late husband, under an oak tree, the cottage freshly painted. Later pages showed Michael and Rachel as children, gap-toothed and joyful, but stopped in their teens, a deliberate absence. In the kitchen, a drawer held letters from James. 1980s postmarks faded. Ellie, this cottage is our heart. One read, we'll grow old here. Roses climbing the walls. The tenderness clashed with the reserved Eleanor I'd known, her warmth buried under years of guardedness. I sat at the table, opening the attorney's envelope. A note in Eleanor's script read, Sarah, trust Rebecca. She knows all. Bring them. Them was underlined twice. A command. I called Michael, voice firm. Will readings at 10. Downtown. You and Rachel need to be there. He sighed. Static crackling. Mom had nothing but debts. Why bother? Just come, I said. Hanging up. Rachel didn't answer, but I left a voicemail, hoping lockdown wouldn't be her excuse. The drive to Rebecca's office past shuttered storefronts, Seattle's lockdown, eerie Pike Place deserted, ferries docked. Michael waited outside the brick building, mask loose, checking his watch. Rachel smoked nearby, face pinched. This better be quick, she muttered, tossing her cigarette. I'm missing a virtual shoot. Rebecca's office was warm, walnut shelves lined with law books, a single orchid on the sill. She was silver-haired, eyes sharp yet kind. 2 women, Margaret and Clara. Eleanor's knitting friends sat quietly, masks lowered. Thank you for coming, Rebecca began, opening a portfolio. I've been Eleanor's attorney for 10 years. Tasked with her final wishes, Michael shifted impatiently. Rachel crossed her arms. I gripped my purse. The envelope's heavy. Rebecca read, to my son, Michael Grayson. I leave my forgiveness unearned. Michael's jaw tightened. To my daughter, Rachel Grayson, my pearl necklace, a reminder of broken promises. Rachel flushed, fingers digging into her arms. To Margaret Ellis and Clara Thompson, $5,000 each for your kindness in my final months. They gasped softly. To Sarah Bennett, my entire estate, the property at 142 Willow Road, bank accounts, investments, insurance, and personal effects. Rachel erupted. This is insane. Michael stood, chair scraping. No way. Sarah barely knew her. Rebecca remained calm, slipping on glasses. Eleanor revised her will on February 15th, 2020. Post-diagnosis of sound mind. Pair a psychiatric evaluation. Michael glared at me. You tricked her. Didn't you? While she was sick. I didn't know, I said, voice trembling. She asked me to drive her to an appointment in February. Said it was medical. I waited outside. Rachel sneered. Perfect Sarah. Stealing everything. Rebecca intervened. Eleanor anticipated this. She recorded a video. Available for court. She slid a psychiatric report across. Dated February 8th, 2020. The cottage is worth $280,000. Investments $220,000. Insurance $140,000. Eleanor lived simply but saved wisely. Margaret and Clara looked at me, shocked but warm. Michael's face paled. Rachel's burned with rage. We'll fight this, Rachel hissed. Rebecca's smile was thin. You may try. Eleanor was thorough. She turned to me. Sarah. Stay? As the others left, Rebecca handed me a third envelope. Eleanor wanted you to have this after the reading. Alone. I opened it. Sarah. You stayed when they fled. Wield this power for truth, not vengeance. Let them reap what they sowed. I folded it, meeting Rebecca's gaze. She chose you, she said softly. Not just her air, but her voice. Back at the cottage, I sat by the fireplace, the third letter in hand. Eleanor's words stirred memories, her quiet smile when I brought her tea in the hospital, her hand squeezing mine during a lucid moment. I'd thought her distant, but she'd been watching, choosing me to carry her truth. The cottage's silence felt alive, its lavender scent urging me to dig deeper, to understand the woman who'd entrusted me with her legacy in a world locked down by fear. The Seattle twilight of April 9th, 2020, was a soft violet. The city hushed under COVID-19. Lockdown, as I drove to the Enumclaw cottage. Eleanor's third letter in my purse. Michael's accusation, you tricked her. Didn't you? And Rachel's venom at the will reading lingered. Their betrayal a fresh layer over the pain of Eleanor's lonely death. I'd stood by her hospital bed 3 days, alone, while they ignored my pleas, citing Zoom chaos and quarantine. Now, they claimed I'd manipulated Eleanor into leaving me her estate, 280,000 cottage, 220,000 investments, 140,000 insurance casting me as a thief. Eleanor's words. Wield this power for truth. Not vengeance echoed, urging me to uncover her secrets in the cottage, her true home. The door creaked open, lavender air soothing my frayed nerves. The 3 envelopes spilled from my purse, pieces of Eleanor's puzzle. The will reading had stunned me, an estate entrusted to me, not her children, who'd forsaken her. I needed to know why. I searched the cottage, opening a locked chest under a window seat with Eleanor's key. Inside were leather journals, her precise handwriting spanning decades. I opened a 2019 journal, settling by the fireplace, embers glowing. James has been gone 7 years. She wrote, May 2019. Michael called, needing $4 for a deal. I sent it, hoping he'd visit. Foolish hope. The words struck deep. I read on. Eleanor's voice sharp. Lonely. Michael's demands. $2,000 for rent. $6,000 for a startup. Rachel's cold visits. Mocking her knitting. Borrowing her locket. Never returning it. Holidays were heart-wrenching. Christmas 2018. Set the table for 3. Baked James's pecan pie. Michael was busy. Rachel with her boyfriend. Ate alone. Pie untouched. Tears blurred my vision. Eleanor's love had been met with indifference, her children draining her spirit. Why hadn't she confided in me? We'd shared moments, her teaching me her scone recipe, me driving her to book club, but she'd hidden this pain. A hospital memory surfaced, her staring, weighing me, as if choosing me. My phone buzzed Michael. I answered, wary. Hey, babe, he said, overly warm. I overreacted. Let's talk over tacos, your favorite. The ploy was transparent. I'm at the cottage, I said. Need time. A pause. Sure, but don't rush anything. Okay. His calculation chilled me. I hung up. In the attic, I found letters from James. 1980s love notes. Ellie, this cottage is our sanctuary. If the kids drift, we'll have this. James's 2013 death left Eleanor alone, her children's neglect deepening her isolation. I recalled a moment at Thanksgiving 2019. Eleanor setting an extra plate just in case, her smile brittle when no one came. By noon, I drove to Rebecca's office, journals in tow. You've been to the cottage? She said, reading my expression. I shared Eleanor's loneliness, voice shaking. Why me? Rebecca leaned in. You were there, Sarah. Not from duty, but care. She saw your strength. She handed me a USB drive. Eleanor recorded audio diaries. Expecting a fight, I played one, her voice thin but clear. Michael asked for 8,000. March 2019. I said no. He didn't call for 4 months. Rachel wanted my necklace for a shoot. I refused. She called me selfish. They're contesting the will, I said. Rebecca nodded. Eleanor knew. Her recordings, journals, and evaluation make their case weak. She showed me a photo of Eleanor in the cottage garden, smiling under the oak tree. This is yours to protect. Back at the cottage, I read until midnight. Eleanor's words, a testament to resilience. Her estate wasn't vengeance, it was justice, shielding her legacy from greed. As I slept in the guest room, lavender enveloping me, I felt her armor settling around me, ready for the fight. The cottage's silence was no longer empty. It was Eleanor's voice, urging me to see Michael and Rachel clearly, to honor her truth in a world paused by pandemic fear. Seattle's spring of April 2020 was subdued. COVID-19. Lockdown cloaking the city in quiet, but the Enumclaw cottage was a refuge, its lavender air calming my racing heart. I'd spent a week immersed in Eleanor's journals, her words revealing a woman betrayed by her children's neglect. Her final letter. Wield this power for truth. Not vengeance guided me as Michael and Rachel prepared to contest her will, accusing me of stealing her 280,000 cottage, 220,000 investments, and 140,000 insurance. I'd been alone by her hospital bed, the only one to hold her hand. While they hid behind pandemic excuses, their greed was a fresh wound. But Eleanor's evidence journals, audio diaries, a psychiatric evaluation was my shield. I returned to our Capitol Hill apartment to pack, bracing for Michael. He was in the kitchen, Zoom muted, stirring pasta with forced cheer. Hey, babe, made carbonara your favorite. Let's talk. The act was transparent, unlike his absence during Eleanor's death. I'm staying at the cottage, I said, zipping my bag, sorting Eleanor's things. His smile slipped. Sure, but we're contesting the will. Nothing personal, just fairness. Fairness. I snapped. Was it fair leaving me alone with her for 3 days? Ignoring my calls. He froze, then deflected. Don't guilt me. Sarah. Mom was tough. You know that. She was alone. I said, voice rising. You didn't even say goodbye. He slammed a spoon down. What did you do? Sweet talk her while she was out of it. I was there, I said. Steady. You weren't. I drove back to the cottage, journals in tow. The confrontation clarifying Michael's entitlement. Rachel's silence was worse, a single text. You'll regret this. The cottage's creak welcomed me, and I lit a fire. Opening a 2018 journal. Michael wanted $7,000 for a sure thing. I refused. He ghosted me for months. Rachel took my scarf, called my knitting granny stuff. Does a 2019 entry broke me. Thanksgiving. Set the table. Made James's stuffing. Michael was swamped. A Rachel at a shoot. Ate alone. Stuffing cold. I Skyped Laura. My friend. Masks off in our homes. They're contesting. I said. Showing a journal. They say I manipulated her. Laura's outrage flared. You were the only one there. Sarah. Eleanor saw their true colors. A court summons arrived. Rachel's challenge claiming Eleanor's incompetence and my coercion. I called Rebecca, hands shaking. Expected, she said. Her attorney's desperate. Eleanor's evidence will crush them. At her office, we reviewed a recording. Eleanor's voice clear. Rachel visited. February 2020. Wanted $2,000 for rent. I said no. She left. No goodbye. Rebecca smiled. This, with the journals and evaluation, is airtight. She handed me a photo of Eleanor knitting under the oak tree. Protect this. At the cottage, I found a box of Eleanor's knitting scarves, a baby blanket with a note. For Michael's child, if he cares. The hope gutted me. Michael's call came. Syrupy. Babe, let's do a virtual date wine. Like old times. I saw through it. Busy, I said. Hanging up. Rachel's 2A. Mom. Voicemail was slurred. You ruined me. Sarah. I'm broke. Help. Or else. I deleted it. The cottage's floorboards creaking approval. Eleanor's truth. My guide. The Seattle courthouse loomed under a drizzling May 2020 sky. Its marble halls hushed under COVID-19 restrictions. Masks mandatory for the few souls navigating its corridors. I walked beside Rebecca Langston, clutching a folder of Eleanor's evidence leather-bound journals, a USB drive of audio diaries, medical records, and a psychiatric evaluation for Rachel's challenge to Eleanor's will. Rachel's petition painted me as a predator, claiming I'd coerced Eleanor into leaving me her estate, a $280,000 cottage in Enumclaw, $220,000 in investments, and $140,000 in insurance policies. Michael, though not legally involved, supported her. His daily calls and feigned warmth, a transparent attempt to sway me. Eleanor's final letter. Wield this power for truth. Not vengeance steeled my resolve. Her documented truth, my defense. I'd spent weeks in her cottage, uncovering a woman abandoned by her children. Her journals and recordings a litany of their neglect. Today, I'd honor her by protecting her legacy. The courtroom was small, its wooden benches spaced for social distancing, the air thick with sanitizer and tension. Rachel sat beside her attorney, a wiry man in a cheap suit, his papers in disarray, his mask slipping below his nose, her eyes, sharp above her own mask, burned with fury, her posture rigid as if bracing for a fight. Michael sat 2 rows behind, his face a careful neutral, but his gaze flickered with resentment, darting between me and the judge. Rebecca, silver-haired and composed, arranged her files with precision, her calm a stark contrast to the room's undercurrent of anger. The judge, a woman in her 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a mask embossed with tiny ferns, called the session to order, her voice muffled but firm. Rachel's attorney rose. his tone nasal as he argued Eleanor's confusion, claiming her terminal illness and medications clouded her judgment. Mrs. Bennet exploited her mother-in-law's vulnerability, he said, gesturing at me. She had no meaningful relationship with Mrs. Grayson, yet secured the entire estate. Rebecca stood, her presence commanding despite the mask. Your Honor. Eleanor Grayson revised her will on February 15, 2020, of sound mind, as confirmed by a psychiatric evaluation dated February 8th. She submitted the document along with medical records and a letter from Eleanor's oncologist affirming her clarity. Mrs. Grayson recorded audio diaries documenting her children's neglect. Rebecca plugged the USB drive into a laptop, and Eleanor's voice, thin but resolute, filled the room. Michael asked for $10,000 in January 2020 to fund a business venture. I refused. He didn't call again until my diagnosis. Rachel shifted, her attorney whispering frantically, his pen tapping nervously. Rebecca continued, presenting journal entries. Rachel hasn't visited since last summer. She wanted my locket for a photo shoot. Called me selfish when I refused. The judge's eyes narrowed, her pen scratching notes. Sarah Bennet spent 3 days by Eleanor's bedside. Rebecca concluded, while her children ignored her calls, citing work and quarantine. Eleanor chose Sarah for her loyalty. The evidence was methodical, irrefutable. Rachel's attorney fumbled a rebuttal, citing Eleanor's pain medication, but Rebecca countered with a pharmacist's affidavit confirming minimal cognitive impact. The judge dismissed the challenge in under 45 minutes. Her ruling crisp. The will stands. Petitioner to cover court costs. Rachel's mask couldn't hide her clenched jaw, her eyes blazing as she stormed out, her attorney trailing. Michael lingered, approaching me in the hallway, his mask pulled down. You turned Mom against us, he said, voice low, a mix of anger and desperation. She did that herself, I replied, meeting his gaze, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. You chose absence. He recoiled, as if struck, and left without another word. The aftermath rippled quickly, even in a lockdown city. A local blog, Seattle Stories, published a post, Woman Inherits Estate After Family's Absence. Sanitizing details but fueling gossip, Rachel's photography clients canceled virtual shoots, her Instagram posts growing sparse, her sharp persona fading. Michael's startup, already shaky, lost a key investor, whispers of his neglect tainting his pitch. That evening, I returned to our Capitol Hill apartment to pack, bracing for Michael. He was waiting in the kitchen, a whiskey glass sweating on the counter, his charm replaced by raw anger. Happy now, he snarled. You've ruined us. I set my bag down, Eleanor's words echoing. Eleanor saw you clearly, I said, voice calm. I'm moving to the cottage permanently. Divorce through attorneys. His shock was genuine, eyes widening. Divorce. After everything I've done for you. The absurdity nearly made me laugh, but I walked upstairs, packing sweaters and books. The apartment's silence a relief. The cottage became my sanctuary, its lavender-scented air and creaking floorboards a balm. I sorted Eleanor's belongings recipe books with handwritten notes, a knitting basket, a letter from James. Don't reward those who forget us. Ellie. Michael's voicemails piled up, his tone shifting from charm to desperation. Babe, I'm in a bind for the mortgage. For old time's sake. Rachel's drunken text arrived at 1 a.m. Evicted. Your fault. Sarah, send $1,000, or I'll make this worse. I ignored them, inspired by Eleanor's journals. which dreamed of the cottage as a community hub. Lockdown barred gatherings, but I planned virtually, Skyping contractors to repair the sagging porch, update plumbing, and paint walls a warm beige. I kept Eleanor's bookshelves, displaying her journals as a tribute, their pages open to her hopes. James and I wanted laughter here, friends around a table. Rebecca helped form a nonprofit, using $80,000 of Eleanor's investments as seed money. Over Zoom, we drafted plans for virtual grief support groups and elder check-ins, COVID-safe initiatives to combat the isolation Eleanor had endured. She'd be proud, Rebecca said, her voice warm through the screen. By June 2020, the cottage glowed, its oak tree garden blooming with wild roses and lavender. I named it Eleanor's Haven, carving a sign above the door. Laura, my friend, Skyped from her Fremont apartment, her eyes bright. You're building her dream. Sarah. In a world that's forgotten connection, the lockdown's quiet amplified my purpose. But also my solitude, nights spent alone. The cottage's creaks my only company. Eleanor's journals a lifeline. I was no longer just Michael's wife, I was Sarah, carrying Eleanor's truth. Ready to open the haven when the world reopened. A beacon in a city scarred by isolation. Seattle's summer of 2021 shimmered with cautious hope, vaccines loosening the grip of COVID-19, and Eleanor's Haven, the Enumclaw Cottage, pulsed with new life. A year after Eleanor Grayson's death on April 7, 2020. The once-forgotten home had transformed into a community hub, its cedar shingles freshly painted, wild roses blooming in the garden. On what would have been Eleanor's 69th birthday, we unveiled a plaque under the sprawling oak tree, Eleanor's Haven, a place of connection in memory of Eleanor Grayson. Masked locals, seniors, grievers, children from a nearby summer program clapped, their voices mingling with Zoom attendees joining virtually from Seattle's suburbs. Margaret and Clara, Eleanor's knitting friends, stood beside me, their eyes misty above their masks. She'd fuss about the attention. Clara chuckled, adjusting her scarf. But she'd love every second of this. The journey had been grueling, forged in the pain of Eleanor's lonely death, Michael and Rachel's betrayal, and the unexpected gift of her estate, a $280,000 cottage, $220,000 in investments, and a $140,000 in insurance. Her final letter, wield this power for truth, not vengeance, had guided me through their failed challenge to her will. Her journals and audio diaries exposing their neglect. Michael's charm had dissolved into desperate pleas. Rachel's venom into drunken begging, but I'd followed Eleanor's mantra, letting them face the consequences of their choices. Eleanor's Haven, launched virtually in July 2020 to navigate lockdown restrictions, now hosted in-person programs with COVID protocols, masks, distancing, and open windows. Monday evenings brought knitting circles, led by Margaret, who taught seniors Eleanor's intricate scarf patterns. Tuesdays offered grief support, where I shared sanitized versions of Eleanor's story, emphasizing the slow betrayal of isolation. Fridays were community potlucks, tables laden with Pacific Northwest staples, grilled salmon, rhubarb pie, blackberry cobbler as neighbors swapped stories of lockdown struggles and small victories. The cottage itself was a living tribute. I'd preserved Eleanor's bookshelves, their spines cracked from love, and displayed her journals in a glass case, open to entries about her dreams. James and I wanted this cottage to hum with laughter, a table full of friends, photos of Eleanor and James, smiling under the oak tree, adorned the walls, their love a quiet heartbeat in the space. A memory surfaced Eleanor at a 2019 Christmas party, her fingers deftly knitting a scarf, her smile softening when I complimented it. "It's just practice," she'd said. But now I saw the depth in her craft, a lifeline through loneliness. Another moment, her teaching me to zest lemons for her scone recipe, her hands steady despite her illness, her voice gentle. "Keep the rind thin, Sarah. It's the little things that matter." Those moments, once small, now anchored me. Her trust in me a gift I was only beginning to understand. I'd changed too, shedding the role of Michael's wife, the dutiful caretaker. My divorce finalized in October 2020. A clean break after Michael realized I wouldn't yield. He'd moved to Portland, remarried to a younger woman. His startup sold to cover debts. News that reached me through Laura's updates. "Rachel," Laura told me over a masked coffee at a Fremont cafe. Worked nights at a Tacoma diner. Her photography career stalled. Her sharp tongue dulled by hardship. I felt no satisfaction, only a quiet certainty that some bonds, once broken, shouldn't be mended. Eleanor's words, "Let them reap what they sowed," guided me, not with cruelty, but with clarity, a permission to protect my peace. Eleanor's Haven became a beacon, its story spreading through a blog I started in August 2020, chronicling its virtual beginnings. A Seattle Times feature in March 2021, Eleanor's Haven, From Isolation to Community, drew virtual donations and volunteers. Even in a city still healing from lockdown, in June 2021, I spoke at a virtual elder care conference. My Zoom window framed by the cottage's bookshelves. "Eleanor died alone," I said, voice steady. Not for lack of family, but because of their choices, missed calls, canceled visits, dismissive words. Attendees flooded the chat with stories of isolated loved ones, their words a mirror to Eleanor's pain. A publisher emailed afterward, proposing a book. "Your story resonates," she wrote. "It's a call to action." I began writing that night, titling it "The Letter That Freed Me," weaving Eleanor's betrayal, her children's greed, her hidden cottage with my journey from heartbreak to purpose. The manuscript, raw in its early chapters, evolved into hope, chronicling the Haven's growth. Set for release in spring 2022. On the anniversary of Eleanor's death, we held a virtual memorial, serving her lemon scone recipe over Zoom, each participant baking along. Margaret shared a story of Eleanor organizing a meal train for a sick neighbor. Clara recalled her knitting classes at a local church, her patience endless. Their memories painted a woman who'd built family beyond blood, a legacy I was continuing. After the call, I walked to the oak tree, placing a bouquet of wild roses at its base. "You're not forgotten," I whispered, the breeze carrying my words. The cottage's lights glowing behind me. Another memory surfaced: Eleanor in the hospital, her hand squeezing mine, her eyes clear despite the morphine. "You're stronger than you know," she'd said. Words I'd dismissed as delirium but now clung to. The Haven grew, adding virtual art classes where seniors painted Puget Sound landscapes, and a senior health webinar with a local nurse, addressing lockdown's toll. A $20 Zosen grant from a Seattle foundation funded a part-time counselor, expanding our grief support. Michael's email arrived in February 2021, carefully worded. "I messed up. Sarah. I'd like to make amends. Can we meet?" I forwarded it to my attorney. No reply needed. Rachel's last text, begging for $800, went unanswered. The Haven's community filled the void, widows sharing tea, kids painting murals on the porch, their laughter a balm. As I stood under the oak tree that July evening, Eleanor's presence was no ghost, but a spark within me. Her gift wasn't the estate, but the permission to see myself clearly, to walk from toxicity without guilt, to build something enduring from betrayal. Eleanor's haven was our legacy, a testament to truth's power in a world relearning connection.